welcome back to the Base Indonesian Talks, guys. With my buddy here, Ragin. He's a Trump supporter from Tennessee. Right? He's one of those "Make America Great Again" people. Yeah. So, how are you doing today, Ragin?
Man, I'm tired and I'm just clinging on to the weekend, wishing it would last just a little bit longer because this week's going to be a tough one. But I'm doing good. I'm blessed.
I see. What are you up to tonight, Ragin? Before so basically, what you guys need to understand is that I shanghaied Ragin into this interview. I Shanghai Ragin into this interview because I thought it'd be really funny. So I think you were playing a game.
I was. I have friends that I have made playing video games, digital friends. As you know, it sounded kind of like a weird thing, maybe 20 years ago. But right now in 2024, making friends over the internet while playing a video game in a chat room, whatever it is, I enjoy them. So if they're all buying a game, I'll buy it sometimes and see how I do, and I enjoy chatting with them.
I see. Well, I'm really sorry to rip you off from your friends.
Hey, we're friends now.
I guess so. Well, anyways, Ragin, let's start up with the opening question. So I need to make sure. Do you support Trump and the America First policy, and the slogan "Make America Great Again"? And how far do you support Trump?
I see things that give me pause about Trump, and then I see and I look at the country currently, I look at the world currently, and I see what Trump says. And some things that Trump said initially maybe sounded more wild and crazy, outlandish. Something that he started talking about a lot was fake news. What is fake news? It's like I was like, okay, so he says they're not nice to him, but I mean, we knew this. We knew there was news that didn't like the candidate on that side, or news that didn't like the candidate on this side. And he was sort of saying that to the degree that the news was maybe not telling us things with honest headlines, with an honest intention, was actually quite rampant. And when I continued to dig into that, I would see the news all of a sudden accuse him of something and spin it in a way and start saying things. And I was like, that's actually not honest. That's actually not true. And that continually built. And, when I saw the way he was treated as a candidate in this country by many of our famous people, by Hollywood, by our media, I was kind of taken back because I was like, this really isn't a fair race as far as they're painting him in every terrible light. And then I can now appreciate that the right wing news would do this to the left. It would paint them in a negative way. But as far as Trump goes, make America great again sounds great. I would love for America to be great. America first. What would that mean? Well, if I'm paying taxes, you expect the taxes to fulfill whatever needs are here in America. At some point, like if I'm paying taxes to this country, you won't look around and see that the country is failing in certain ways. That if we're paying appropriate taxes, we would be able to take care of those things. And I think that when you look at the politics right now in America, a lot of Americans notice that we're sending tons of money overseas, and then we look around and feel like certain things right here in our own country we should be investing in so it can remain a good place to be.
I see. So, guys, what you need to understand here is Ragin not only votes for Trump, but he supports Trump as well. There is a there is a there is a huge distinction between supporting people and voting for people, right? Because when you're voting for people, it's you choosing them. It's an option. It's an option. You don't necessarily have to support a candidate and their policy. You just have to like the person, or maybe the other candidate is ounces more bad. So you choose this one candidate. So voting is more general. Meanwhile, supporting, I feel like it's much more specific, right? when you support, not only do you vote, but you also agree with their vision and mission. You also agree with their policies, with their programs. You basically agree with the entire package. Not really the entire package, but you get what I mean, right? And here I'd like to point out that in recent times, ever since Obama became president, right? American foreign policy is sure to burn a lot of money in America. Meanwhile, Americans feel like they're being left behind because American foreign policy is always put first than everything else, right? And here comes Trump in 2016 with his America First policy. But America First is not really it's nothing new in America. It's not a new discourse, right? Well, both the Democrats and the Republicans have used it at some point. Is that right, Ragin? Like both the Democrats and Republicans have used it at some point?
I think that certainly that angle it has been utilized to say we're going to help Americans, right? So I mean
Yeah.
that's how you get somebody's vote is we tell you how we're going to help you. And I think that America First currently in its current iteration with Trump is all about, hey, I'm going to help America in this way, and we're going to think of America when we make deals, when we do things, we're going to think of how life is in this country, because if we're falling short in certain areas, we don't want to be necessarily uh, completely world minded about all these things going on in the world. When it's kind of like a family, sometimes you can use this as a family sort of metaphor. Like if things are going wrong in your own home, like and you're spending so much time at work, or doing things outside the home, but you can't necessarily make your home run well. You're kind of maybe doing something that is, some would say, inappropriate, because you're not actually doing the things you need to do at home and taking care of those needs, and you're prioritizing everything else.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense for a lot of people. The thing about America First, what I'm hearing is that the thing about America First is that it puts domestic affairs in first priority for the American government, right?
At the very least, it raises them up in priority.
Yeah,
It, yeah.
and reeling back into the history of America First, right? I feel like a lot of Americans they can't really discriminate the concept from its originator, right? Because America First, while yeah, before the point of history that I'm trying to make, that I'm trying to point out, it has been used in American political discourse. Democrats and Republican politicians, they used it at varying points in the United States, and even President Woodrow Wilson has set America first as well as a policy, right? But
Right.
I feel like a lot of people they discriminate the America First policy because it's as this racist, xenophobic thing, because the KKK has used the phrase at the organization's peak during the 1920s, when racist and xenophobic sentiment was widespread. But it's not really it's a case of, I feel like it's a case of like, I'm not trying to compare America with Germany here, but do you know that the
Hmm.
swastika was a Hindu symbol before it was used by the Nazis, right?
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
it was actually the same symbol, but maybe in reverse,
It's a bit tilted, right? It's a bit tilted 90
like
degrees, but
like
it's the
flipped,
same symbol,
right?
right? The symmetry is there. It's a symbol
Yeah.
that symbolizes peace, right? So the Nazis took that, and everybody else thinks it's a Nazi symbol when it's actually not, right? And this is what's happening with America's First. America First predates the KKK, right? But a lot of people think that America First originated from KKK and racist politicians. And moving on, We're gonna look at some of the sentiments of the people who are against the America First policy.
Hmm.
As a Trump supporter, do you think you get discriminated or demonized?
Definitely. I feel like if I were to say something that I support that is on the side of Trump, uh, and somebody doesn't like it, somebody doesn't like my explanation, whatever it is, they kind of want to give me an ism. They want to call me some sort of a name that will cause me to shut up. That will say, hey, if you think the way you think, then you're this, and I can say, I don't. I'm like they want to call you a racist, they want to call you a sexist, they want to call you homophobic, like all these different terminologies, and they zero in and they essentially it's be quiet, we don't like your viewpoint and we're going to call you names rather than discuss what your viewpoint actually even is. Once they hear you're not with their viewpoint necessarily, it's almost like you're a threat to anything that could possibly go well.
I see, I see, I see. Did you experience discrimination, like verbal discrimination in real life, like when you just walk
Oh,
down the street and then like somebody, who
I
recognizes
would
you?
not wear. Yeah, sorry about that. I would not wear a "Make America Great" hat in public.
Uh huh.
I would not put a Trump sign or sticker on my car for fear of getting, keyed or someone being angry because, essentially what we were, told just recently, in terms of politics, there when Trump did get elected, there was a lot of rioting that occurred. And when that rioting occurred, it was largely, in many groups of people, it was championed. It was essentially saying, "Hey, something bad happened, so we should riot, so something will change." And so there was like almost a free reign to not only tell people who you're voting for, what your policies are that you support, but also you could even burn down a city and, hey, let's let it slide. They're kind of emotional right now. They're kind of angry right now. But it's like if I literally just say, hey, I'd like a more secure border or something of that nature, you get accused of being racist, even though like I'm a huge fan of immigrants. I'm a huge fan of humanity. As I mean, in my Christian faith, humanity is super important to me. So it's like when I look at immigration, of course, I don't want immigration to happen illegally because there's a lot of bad things that can come with that. But I'm a
Mm,
big fan of immigration and I'm a big fan of helping people.
I see, I see, I see. So, moving on to the next question, I guess. Uh, while Trump is certainly a Republican, it's an open secret that Trump himself is hated inside the Republican Party, right? And
Hmm.
I just want to explore this one bit as well. Like, could you please lead us on? Could you please like l- guide us through that, through that notion?
Well, what you would notice right now in American politics is former presidents and former Democrat presidents are all buddies. They're all pals. They'll do videos
Yeah, yeah.
together, they'll do commercials together, and they seem to be aligned in so many different ways. And what many of us have maybe come to realize is that many of the Republicans, quote unquote, that have served in power, that have been there for a long time, they haven't really won many battles for Republicans. They kind of just say, "Hey, I'm a Republican and I'm in Washington." And yet they actually almost always, what do they call it? Across the aisle, shake hands, across the
Yeah.
aisle, both sides working together. And the Republicans would be the ones to make those deals, and then things would slowly get more progressive and Democrats would just win like every time. And the Republicans were just sort of there. It was kind of like a almost it would seem like a controlled opposition. Like, oh yeah, we're Republicans, we're here, but all in all, from one thing I saw, is both the Republicans and the Democrats kept wars going. They kept the war machine going. They kept the military kind of pursuits going. And then when Trump comes into office, he talks about how he doesn't want us to stir up conflicts and have foreign wars and conflicts and stuff ongoing. And there's a lot of people that seem to profit from war on the left and on the right. And when you look at right now, currently Trump's leading in all of our polls, most of the polls that people respect. And so in that way, whatever was the Republican Party, they're only praised by the Democrats. They prop them up and they say, oh, these are
Yeah,
the good
yeah,
Republicans. But none of the actual Republicans or the MAGA people like the so-called Republicans anymore. They've kind of maybe been exposed as never doing anything for their voters.
yeah. So I get this clear picture that the military-industrial complex within America is compromised with Trump becoming president, right? Because America
He doesn't
First
want to do
policy.
wars.
Yeah, he doesn't want to do wars. The reduction of conflict is the consequence of the America First policy because it puts domestic affairs in priority above foreign policy, right? And it surely compromises the military-industrial complex, who is built to keep on profiting from armed conflicts and wars. But at the same time, there's also the issue of America as a guarantee, as a, what do you call that, as a guarantor, as a somebody who secures guarantee.
Mm-hmm.
America's role in guaranteeing world peace is important. Would you agree with that statement? Because America is the sole world superpower, right? We all know this since 1991. And America plays a leading role in NATO, and also in preserving security inside the Asia Pacific region. So, would you say, while the America First policy does reduces conflict as a consequence of its policy, how would you address the uh, implications of reduction in American foreign influence that would surely play a role in its, role in preserving world peace?
I think that America certainly should stand up for the little guys, so to speak, against tyranny, against uh, bad situations, especially for people who are our historical friends or allies. And I think that that can largely often be done by essentially saying, don't do that.
Mm,
Like, because of the strength of our military, because of maybe that reputation of being a powerful nation, we can say what we don't want people to do. And I think that on that front, if we have an ally and somebody comes in to essentially brutalize our ally, we could perceive this and say, this is evil, this is bad, and come in and still end up fighting a war. What we see right now as Americans maybe is that we see conflicts, and in some way the conflict would actually end if we didn't fund it, and in that way we're actually paying for wars to happen that would have already been won and ended, and then we can figure out what to do with the aftermath. But to prolong it essentially is, I don't know what it looks like when we talk about Russia and Ukraine. I don't know what that looks like. Before this conflict, nobody would have probably
mm,
said that Ukraine has a great, chance against Russia. When I don't know what that looks like in an end game. All I know is we're sending them tons of money to be able to keep going. They would not be able to keep going if we didn't send them all this money. And I know that, when they tell us Ukraine good, Russia evil incarnate, there's many Ukrainian citizens that actually don't like their government. Similarly to right now, many American citizens don't like their government. So just because somebody comes in perceivably as the threat, they actually felt brutalized by their own government before Russia did what they did. And Russia, if you actually saw what they actually said, hey, they're actually mistreating citizens who we believe, in our minds, they're Russian loyal, and they're being mistreated by their Ukrainian government. So like, there's nuance there, and there's complicated things to where it's not all as simple as let's go beat the bad. And I think war is a lot more complicated than they would want you to believe when you're giving your vote to it or giving your money for it.
I see, I see, I see. As a Trump and America First supporter, how do you feel towards the developing situation in Ukraine? Do you think the United
I
States government should continue to commit its resources into assisting Ukraine armed struggle, or do you think it needs to be reviewed and possibly withdrawn?
Yeah, the more that I've looked at the conflict, I've learned about how America, back when there was tension prior, made certain agreements with Russia. And one such agreement was that we wouldn't kind of come on their doorstep, Ukraine,
Yeah, yeah,
and
yeah.
maybe set up
1995.
military bases and such.
Mhm.
And so what we've seen now is that we indeed did have military bases or bio warfare bases. I think they call them bio defense labs, and they denied it for a while. And then eventually now they've said, no, we did have bio defense labs in Ukraine. And I can see how, okay, we told them we wouldn't, and then we do have them. And then they're kind of saying we say the no to this. And I can kind of appreciate that if we ever said to Russia we won't do this and then we do it anyways, they can eventually at some point say we don't want military labs on our border any more than we would want Russia building military labs in Mexico or Canada. Like we don't really want that, because like we're not necessarily aligned. We can play nice in some at some degree, but it's like we don't want necessarily military bases set up right on our border. So
Yeah, that
when I
makes
look at
sense.
that conflict, I see that, when you see what Zelensky said, when you see what we have said, they keep talking about democracy. They
Mm.
canceled elections in Ukraine. They jailed people that they perceived to be the opposition party or loyal to Russia. And so, like, they kept saying, we have to defend democracy for Ukraine. And when I look at that situation, you're kind of like, well, what is democracy? Is democracy jailing your political apartment or opponents, jailing the opposing media? Is democracy essentially saying that if this guy isn't in charge, then right now they're saying that Trump is a threat to democracy on our news. And what does that mean? So democracy means that if the other guy wins, democracy is over. Like in some respect, isn't democracy that people can vote for somebody to win?
Yeah, yeah. I
I,
do
I, I
agree with
personally
that.
see that Russia and Ukraine had no shot against Russia, just schematics. It's like Shaquille O'Neal versus a toddler in a game of basketball. It's just not a feasible versus situation. And the only way that Ukraine can keep going is essentially if we all pour money into it. But still, you just imagine how can they actually overcome Russia, this mega force and on the planet, especially military wise, when Ukraine historically did not have the strength of the military. We can send weapons, we can send all this stuff, and I personally just, one thing Trump did say, I don't know how anybody could argue with it. They said, "Are you for Russia or Ukraine?" And I completely agree with his answer. It's a perfect answer. He said, "I want people to stop dying." So how can we accomplish that? Why is Russia pissed off? Why is Ukraine in conflict with Russia? Why is Russia in conflict with Ukraine? How do we stop the death? And I like that mindset. Like let's not only focus on winning, let's focus on how do we stop the bloodshed. Like
Mm-hmm.
what would it take?
I
And
see,
I
I
don't
see.
feel like that conversation's being had. At least we're not being told. We're just being told Ukraine must win at all costs, and we're sending tons and tons of money.
Yeah, 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 yeah. It really does echo back to what this one columnist Daniel Larison once said about Trump in The American Conservative. He wrote that Trump was quick to denounce previous wars as disasters, but his complaint about these wars was that the US wasn't getting anything tangible from them, which is very consistent with his America First outlook, right? But at the same time, if he continues to throw resources in Ukraine against Russia, there's going to be lives stacking up, both Ukraine and Russian
Right.
lives, right? And I feel like in a Trump administration with an America First policy, uh, the administration would definitely review their support for Ukraine, and they would take a lot of steps that would be seen by many people inside America and in the West as pro-Russia, right? But it's just a matter of perspective. And that, for a lot of people in Western Europe, would spell a compromise in their territorial integrity against Russia, because that's exactly the whole point of this conflict. But I'm not here to open up a can of worms about who's right. Is Ukraine is in the right, or is America is in the right? Let's reel back to America, and let's talk about illegal immigration, right? Because this is the thing. I noticed, because America First policy is also about securing jobs for Americans, right? Which was one of the primary concerns of voters back in 2016.
Right.
It denounces and it strongly opposes illegal immigrants, but at the same time, it has a budding consequence of, I wouldn't say restricting, right, but I would say strengthening its immigration policies. And in a way, while a lot of Americans, I feel like, they see it as a good thing. Immigration does secure our borders, secures our job, and also secures our economy in the long run. For some Americans, it is a medium to indulge in their discrimination and prejudice against people from different countries who wants to live in America and have a second chance of the and have a second chance in life, wants to live the American dream. So what do you think about immigration and the illegal immigration as a Trump supporter and avid an advocate of the American First policy?
Yeah, I think I see it largely through the lens of also being a Christian. And
I see, I see.
when I look at Christianity, I am well aware that not every Christian out there is actually representing Christianity in a good way. They're saying I'm a Christian, and then they're doing terrible things. They're saying I'm a Christian, and then they're saying something terrible, right?
Yeah.
And so from that aspect, I understand that, with regards to, people who are looking at immigration, some could definitely have some hateful prejudice mindset, or they would say, oh, immigration needs to be stiff because, and then it would come to some racist reasoning. Mine is a locked door policy. When I go to bed at night, I lock my door, not because I hate anybody, but because I understand that it's important to know who's coming into my house. It's
Mm.
important to recognize them. It's important to maybe plan for that, make sure that enough people could even fit in my house. Would it even be safe for people just to keep piling through the door? It's like, do I even know these people? I see that there's an importance of safety even to the, we have drugs pouring across our border. Fentanyl's a big one, that is coming across. There's cartels down there. There's also human trafficking element. We don't know who everybody is coming across. You can say, oh, they're seeking a better life, and then some of these people disappear into our country. We don't know where they are. Some of them could literally be people who are in captivity that are being taken across the border, taken to a buyer. Like, this sort of thing is happening. Like, it's been exposed. People are working on those cases in legal ways. So it's like, we can say, oh, it's so wonderful to leave our border wide open and let people just come on in. And it is irresponsible because, like you talked about jobs, people do need to be able to support a living in what we have here. And really, if immigration, many people are coming in legally. And when people come in illegally, I completely understand that some of them truly are just desperate to escape a bad situation. But then I also see that some people are coming in because they are up to no good. And to be honest, every single illegal immigrant has broken a law the
Yes.
instant they illegally immigrate into our country. So you can say, oh, they're all wonderful people, and no, none of them break laws. They've all broken a law. The only ones who I see not as complicit are the small kids who are with people, and them I worry about most because there's a lot of theory, a lot of maybe even instances people can point to where they say this isn't their parent that they're coming up here with. They're being shoveled in and then they disappear on the other end. That's worrisome. But I see it as, if you're going to have an open border, that sounds great. If everybody was just perfect and kind and loving in the world, as I would love as a Christian, but if that was true, come on in. But the unfortunate thing is there's people who want to do us harm. There's
Mm,
people that are up to no good. And if we just let them pile into the country, there's probably people that come from enemy nations that decide to
mhm.
just take a trip to Mexico and crawl in through the border, and they're just wandering around our country waiting to do whatever they would maybe do with that access.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. The illegal immigration network inside the United States is surely a problem, right? Ever since I feel like, for most of American history, because again, America is a huge country. There's plenty of avenues to infiltrate the countries from, right?
Right,
And at the same time, most of these activities is focused on the southern border, right? The border of Mexico and the
right,
United States. A lot of people, they trespass into United States territory in order to become, I wouldn't say illegal immigrants, go into a country just so they can become illegal immigrants, but by doing the action, they have committed a crime in American territory, right? Which is to become illegal immigrants. If you want to be an immigrant, you gotta go through the front door. You don't go into somebody's backyard and
right,
open up their glass garden door, right, to get in. That's trespassing. But if you wait outside at the door, if you wait outside the door, right, and that's when you start respecting people's property, right? And obviously,
right.
American territory is the property of the American people. Would you agree? It's not.
Uh, yeah, definitely the country. I mean, it's really a part of our creed: for the people, by the people. I mean, that's the mentality, and it was never, as you brought up prejudices and stuff. It was never for a certain type of people, just whoever is a citizen of this country, and that has become more and more diverse, and we celebrate that.
Yeah.
But it's like when you look at what America should be, certainly there's somebody I would look at and hear them say America is this, and I would say, ugh, like I don't agree with your definition or leaning, but I understand that there's people that are developing all sorts of opinions about what this is, this America thing. And I think the
Yeah.
truth is it's not perfect, and we're still seemingly figuring it out because
Mm,
there's so much conflict, so much divide, so much hatred, so much fear, and there's so many aspects that people don't trust, they feel are broken or corrupt even.
mhm.
And so when you're in America and you talk about what is America, some people are starting to say, I'm a little worried about what America is, maybe, because there's so much that is happening that maybe we feel like we're not privy to, even though originally politicians and the government were supposed to serve us. They were supposed to be us who ruled for a time and then came back to being regular Americans. But instead, what we have is these people who decide that they're lifelong politicians, and they just that's their whole life. They never go back to being a normal person. They stay over there, and somehow, bro, they get richer and richer and richer. Their bank accounts swell, even though their pay is not very big. And
Mm,
I personally would want to have term limits for politicians, and I would want to know exactly where politicians' funds come from, especially in large amounts, because that kind of tells you why all of a sudden, hey, we sent this guy up there and they're not doing anything, that they're not representing us. And maybe
mm,
that's because they're getting rich, taking deals from people who are giving them money.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah. So yeah. Again, like this ultimately comes back to America first really prioritizes the needs of the American people first, right? Instead of all its policies and all of its foreign policies and agendas. Uh and it really, we're still like you guys are still figuring out exactly what the definition, what your views of America is, right? It's still on the works. And but obviously, in my opinion, I feel like Americans would have the privilege to determine what is America first, right? not the
That
policy, but they're first in line to determine what America first, right? But let's move on. Let's still stay in the discussion of the immigration policy, right? Because obviously, like, people, as you said, people, they immigrate into the United States to have better lives, to have a better chance of living, and to escape, oppression or probably economic turmoil, right? And as we know, in northern Mexico, there has been a really violent war on drugs. Like, it has intensified this last 10 years. And
right.
what do you think, as an American citizen, right? What do you think should the American government take in order to help deal with this issue? Because I know it's a Mexican problem. The war on drugs is a Mexican
Yeah.
problem, right? But it affects America in a lot of ways. There's huge demand of drugs coming in from the United States, and a lot of people fleeing the violence and chaos and corruption. They run away to the United States because that's the closest country that it's adjacent to them. That's the closest country to them. And America is also known to be a stable country in a few states, that
Yeah.
is. So, what do you think of that?
I've heard a lot. I have a definite heart for the idea of people who feel unsafe where they are and they're fleeing corruption, they're fleeing a bad situation, and they see America as, the haven, the place. If we just got there, we would be finally safe from. And they see things that I don't see. Right now, there's places that are getting bombed. Right
Uh
now,
huh.
there's entire groups of people who are being attacked just for existing. And so, when I look at that situation, my heart, is definitely for people. If I encounter somebody and they're an illegal immigrant, I'm not going to think they're a lesser human at all. The radar only goes up in that I know that not everybody is up to good things. So
Uh huh.
I personally think I've heard recently some people saying, we want to be able to give a pathway to citizenship, for people
Uh
who are here that we investigate and come to believe are not a threat, and we actually get to go through the process of figuring out exactly who they are. I've heard some people say, at least take a test to kind of understand what country you're joining,
huh.
understand what this nation's about, give an option to serve the government via military or other means, like to be able to do a service. And because not everybody wants to sign up for service. I mean, America, much of the world maybe, but America definitely, you become kind of entitled. You
Mm-hmm.
live in such a special country, you live in such a place that has blessed you with so much, and then they say, hey, go fight for your country. And a lot of us, we don't even get off the couch, we're going to go fight in a war, like what? And so if people were saying like, hey, I'll come and be in your military if that gains me citizenship, I love that idea. Like, of
Mm-hmm.
course, like I only respect people that say, hey, I'll sign up to do something that's kind of scary, kind of uncertain, and to become a citizen. Like, I want avenues for people to be able to be cared for. Like I said, if I see people, as a Christian, I love this story, the Good Samaritan, the
The Good
person on the side of
Samaritan,
the
yeah.
road. They're beat up. They're someone you classically aren't supposed to like. I want to like those people. I want to help those people. I want to lift up those people. And I think that there's a lot of Americans who feel the same way. But unfortunately, not everybody's even a good Samaritan. To be honest, some people will fake that they've been attacked on the side of the road. This isn't just
Yeah, yeah.
immigration. I'm just saying this is just a scam. And then they'll attack you when you come to help them. And
Mm,
that's the sort of thing that I want to be able to be safe about, because we have had people that a girl got raped on a college campus by an illegal immigrant.
mm.
And that didn't make national news because that's not very profitable, maybe, to a lot of the national news markets and their mission
Yeah.
on what they would say is important or how we should think. But there's people that are coming into this country and they're already committing crimes, even raping young girls. And I look at that and I say, wow, that's directly linked to the idea that let's not vet these people as they come across. Let's
Mhm.
let we're just letting people in, and we're not looking exactly who is coming across all of them. Some of them, I guarantee you, are lovely and they're escaping bad things. Some of them are coming in to do bad things.
I see, I see, I see. Yeah, the safety of American people comes into a huge concern when you're letting in people that you don't know into your borders. But at the same time, I just like to give you a bit of pushback here, because like some people, regardless if they're an illegal immigrant or not, they would still commit crime, right? But obviously, an American committing crime, you would say, okay, it's just crime. But when it's an illegal immigrant, it's a different thing. It's as if though it's a generalization of them, of their entire existence. Like they're here to make crime. But I'm not saying that illegal immigrants are, they're out to make crime everywhere. I'm sure a few illegal immigrants, they're there just to find jobs, but they haven't respected the American process yet by actually becoming normal immigrants. Okay, I'd like to rephrase that. Not normal immigrants, but like illegal immigrants becoming legal immigrants, right? By
Sure.
going into a review, being interviewed about their backgrounds and all of that, and they want to be illegal. They stay illegal because they're afraid that America's probably going to deport them back into where they come from, and obviously that's going to be a real bad idea because some of them are fleeing violence and oppression, and if they go back, they're under threat of not existing at all, right? But
Sure.
at the same time, here the trend is, let's take a look at like Europe, right? You said America, when illegal immigrants they come, crime tends to, what do you call that? Crime
Any
tends to
crime.
increase, right? And in Europe, it's also the same thing. In Sweden, you get illegal immigrants. With illegal immigrants coming in, crime also increases. In Austria, in Belgium, in France, it's the same thing, right? So that's just like the caveat I'm trying to make. Um,
Hmm.
but we went through Trump in the Republican Party, and then the foreign policy, and obviously the immigration and job security, right?
Right.
Uh, do you have anything else to say regarding the immigration? Because I'm gonna move over the discussion to something else.
Uh, yeah, I think one thing you said is not when we paint with a broad stroke and we say, "Hey, look what an illegal immigrant do. This is what illegal immigrants do." And I
Yeah,
agree with you. Not every illegal immigrant is doing these things. It's
yeah,
just if we have a rampant problem of illegal immigration and we're actually not putting efforts into not allowing so much illegal immigration, and you have girls get raped, you have people get murdered, then I personally see that there is actual culpability on the policymakers and the people who are making decisions to not enforce a border, because you're allowing people to come in. And I would literally say to anybody who came into my house, I would want to know who they are,
mm-hmm.
just for safety. I
Yeah,
would
just
not say, "Oh, you're a stranger. That's fine. Come on in." And then if my family got harmed, I wouldn't just be like, "Oh no!" Like, well, that's not true of anybody that would walk through my door that I don't know who they are. It's like, who cares? It happened because it happened once. And if it happens at least once, does that not matter? Does that not?
yeah,
I
yeah,
mean, when we look at the George Floyd situation,
yeah. The
this
George
has
Floyd.
happened, and then they can point to certain situations where the police have done things and that it's in this negative light. And I know people right now that essentially say all policemen are evil, as if policemen come out of the womb policemen, and as if policemen don't look like every sort of human that could possibly exist. There's policemen of every race and ethnicity and gender. And so, like, when you look at that situation, I can't paint all policemen bad because I don't like what this policeman did, and I can't paint all illegal immigrants bad because of what certain illegal immigrants do. But I can say, well, if some illegal immigrants are coming in and raping and murdering, how about we try to cut down on how many people are sneaking into this country so that we can know exactly who's coming in to make this the safest possible place as we can for the people living here. So then
Yeah,
that
yeah.
maybe if it's good enough here, then people say, "Hey, we've done a really good job here. Let's help. Let's go do mission work. Let's go out and help this situation." I know that a storm hit Indonesia, right? Like,
Yeah.
let's go send money towards that. Let's go send money towards relief. Let's do that. Like, I like that mindset, but I think when people feel left behind, when people feel like, "Hey, I'm a veteran and I'm not being cared for," like, what was the point?
Mm.
That's an ugly reality that we're experiencing as Americans.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So what you say also goes line in line with Murphy's Law. You recognize Murphy's Law, right? Anything that can go
Mm-hmm.
wrong will go wrong, right?
Mm-hmm.
So there is no would you say that there is a distinction between a crime committed by an American and a crime committed by illegal immigrants?
The only distinction is that if we actually were doing our part to try to limit illegal immigration, that crime may not have occurred.
I do agree. I do
So
agree. Yeah. I concur
that
to
would be
that.
the biggest distinction I would make.
Yeah, if we can avoid a situation where an immigrant will commit crime, then we should do well to prevent it. That's a mindset that I really like. It's not
Yeah,
saying that crime committed by illegal immigrants is worse than a crime committed by Americans. That's just a terrible moral myopia, right?
right.
But here is that yeah, we can prevent, we can control the crime rate if we also control the immigration as well.
Y- Yeah,
Yeah.
even as a Christian, I recognize sin in the world, or evil maybe, or unloving, destructive behavior, or something
Yeah.
like that. So I'm not gonna say that when somebody commits a sin, it's worse than when another person commits a sin. I
Yeah.
think committing the sin is a bad thing. So yeah, exactly, kind of what
Yeah. I
you're
see.
saying.
I see. I see. Yeah. So let's move on to another topic, still regarding the Trump and America first, right? So last night for us Indonesians, right? This is going back full circle again, Ragin. So last night,
Yeah.
um, Biden announced that he's dropping out of the race. And obviously it's no secret that he's dropping out of the race because of his age problems, right? He's a
Hmm.
senior citizen. I feel like his mental capability and
Faculties.
determination and faculties is deteriorating at such a rapid rate, right? And he is in no position to hold any sort of public office whatsoever. I personally have nothing against Biden. I do not have it personal for him. I see him as like my own grandpa because how Biden acts is a bit like how my grandpa acts. It's very endearing. So it makes me really sad and heartbroken to see such a man is being used for other politicians to stay in their offices, right? And
Yeah,
so when he wants
sure.
to drop out of the race, I'm really happy. I'm relieved. Not only because America would be spared from a puppet leadership, but also because this man is in no condition to be running a country. He should be at home. He should be enjoying and spending the rest of his days just being happy, right? Could you agree on that, Region?
I have no ill will towards Joe Biden.
Yeah.
Like, I've brought up my Christianity, but it's like I believe God loves everybody, and so should I. I'm even supposed to love my enemies. So even if I perceive Joe Biden as an enemy, I would want to pray for him and love him and have good wishes towards him.
That's
Um,
some
so
yeah.
I so
Sorry.
I definitely don't have a negative uh, view of or ill will towards Joe Biden, but I definitely agree that we all kind of noticed that Joe Biden has been a politician for a long time. We've seen
Yeah.
a lot of Joe Biden,
We've seen
and
a
the
lot
Joe
of Joe
Biden that we have
Bidens.
today, yeah, Joe Biden's seen a lot of politics, and
Yeah.
I think that once you have a world leader in this position that some would consider to be, what did we have in Egypt, the Pharaoh, or in Babylon you'd have the king of that nation, or in Greece or Rome you'd have the Caesar, whatever. It's like you have these major leaders. So like right now we have Joe Biden, who's like the Pharaoh, the leader, the
The
perceivable most
leader
powerful
of the
man.
free world.
Yeah, of the free world, and
Yeah.
he literally forgets what he's saying sometimes when he's speaking. He seemingly has to be led off stage in a certain way. He reads the teleprompter when it says end of quote. And to be perfectly honest, I work with the elderly,
Hmm.
and I see a lot of similarities between my patients who have diagnoses such as dementia and Alzheimer's and
Yeah.
altered mental status and certain things with him, and Parkinson's even. And it's like, I'm not saying that people with difficulties or sicknesses can't be successful and can't succeed and do well. I'm saying that when your brain is affected and when you're thinking, sometimes they say, just recently, they said maybe he had a bad day, he had a cold. And I'm like, well, hey, if you can have a bad day or have a cold or have a day where he's a little slower or a little not as sharp, he can't run a country
Yeah.
with this much at stake.
Hmm.
It's like, and at this point, even I'm sort of wondering, how can you say I can't run for office again, and maybe blame some of these things, aging in your mind, and yet still operate as president for another few months? Yeah, I don't
Yeah.
I don't understand how that works. That, to me, that's kind of problematic in and of itself, to say, hey, I'm no longer going to run, and many believe it's because of age and mental things, like as you expressed, and yet he's still running the country until the election. That's kind of worrisome. It makes you feel like maybe he's not actually the one running the country.
Do you think Kamala Harris should step up and become president in his stead? Do you think he should just resign as president,
It,
as the most powerful man in the world?
if many people's suspicions are true, that Joe Biden actually does have mental difficulties right now, remembering things with his decision making, remembering, just being aware and being sharp, then yeah, the vice president ought to step in that situation and lead. If she doesn't appear, people don't like her, some people, right? But
Yeah.
she appears like she's still Kamala Harris. She's still as sharp as she may have been 10 years ago.
Hmm.
And in that respect, you want the person in charge to be able to be capable and sharp in making those decisions. So yeah, I would say that it would make sense if he can't run for president. It would kind of make sense to me. If the situation is as bad as some believe, he definitely shouldn't be running the country. But if it's just, if they believe it's not necessarily that bad yet, but they think it will be, my heart goes out to him if he's definitely kind of, hey, got a dementia diagnosis or something like that.
I see. I see. I see. Um. So so Biden's dropping out of the race, and there are questions about his competence inside the presidency. And we all know that the U.S. that the POTUS, the office of the president of the United States, is the most powerful position, the most powerful office that you can have in the world, right? Next to the CEO of BlackRock, that is. But
Yeah.
anyways,
Yeah.
um it takes a lot of skill, it takes a lot of pull, and also a certain amount of intelligence to utilize the office in its full capacity, right? Which he hasn't been
Right.
demonstrating this past 2 years, even at the start of his presidency, right? It has begun
Yep.
to deteriorate. Now, my question is, who is going to replace him in the Democratic election? Who do you think is better fit to, as somebody who is voting for Trump? Who could you see run or compete against Trump? Because obviously, inside a democracy, we need opposition, right, Ragin?
Uh,
In a
Opposition
democracy,
is really, we have checks and
you
balances,
you guys
right?
have
So
checks and balances, right?
we
And then afterwards, like, obviously, you're not gonna let Trump win in just like 3 months away from elections. I mean, that is great for everybody who votes and supports Trump, but I feel like it's not a really good reflection on democracy, because there's 3 months left before the election. The Democrats really have to do something, right? So who would you see, compete against Trump in a Democratic election? Do you in the Democratic side, in the Democratic side of the race? Do you think it's Mr. Beast, or do you think it's Taylor Swift? Anyone. You can name anyone.
there's so many age groups that would have varying opinions, and the voters are in these certain, they're in different atmospheres, right?
Yeah.
So if you said Mr. Beast, certainly all the new voters, young voters are like, whoa, and they would not even care about they would not even care about experience. They'd say, wow, Mr. I mean, you could say Taylor Swift, wow, Taylor Swift running the country, that sounds way better, you know. It's like, and then there would be certain older voters who would say that's horrific.
Mm.
Like, what are you going to do? Like they have no experience doing any of this. They're just good at writing music or good at putting together videos or doing outreach. It's like, I think that a dynamic personality is probably what they want. I think that what is problematic for the Democrats right now is many people do not like Joe Biden's presidency. His approval rating is very low. Many people do not like Kamala Harris, and she signed off on the Joe Biden presidency and said everything has been great about it for years now. And so, but seemingly she's next up in line. And the news for a long time has said they're doing wonderful. They're incredible. You'd see Joe Biden eating ice cream and they'd say nothing is bad. If your groceries are expensive, ignore it because the president likes ice cream. Like, that's sort of the feeling we got. Like, the news wouldn't admit that we're like, hey, things are more expensive. We're kind of worried. And hey, the border patrol people say it's really bad and you're saying it's not. And it's like, there's certain things I sort of feel like the news is sort of complicit in sort of making us feel like, you know, like even Joe Biden was operating well when maybe he hasn't been operating well for quite a while. But it's possible in my mind that because now he so clearly seemingly was going to lose in all the polls and did really bad in the debate and things like that. Now, because he's going to lose, now they're like, oh, he's lost. He's not sharp. I think he hasn't been sharp for a long time. But it's only because he's unpopular that they want to cast him aside because of mental difficulties. If he was popular, I think they'd run him into the ground. That's how I honestly feel about it. But, you know, when I look at who could be popular, I know that Democrats, I've heard names like Michelle Obama. I've heard names like Gretchen Whitmer and Governor Newsom. I've heard names, you know, I've heard people, you know, get, you know, Pete Buttigieg or some of these Democrats who have ran before and had some positive maybe energy to them. And I've heard, you know, some people, maybe I already said, but like Hillary Clinton even, you know, to do like some sort of a rehash. Yeah, and if you're talking about older candidates, I mean, like, what are we doing? You know, putting Hillary Clinton back into a major office, you know, like these are like, why? If you look at the beginning of America, bro, our founders were very young men. Like,
yeah,
they were
they're
white
20-year-olds.
wigs, so
They're
think,
20 to 30-year-old.
yeah,
They're an entire
100%.
Reddit. They're a subreddit. I swear they're a subreddit. Yeah. The American Constitution is just a Reddit post.
Oh, 100%. And it's super, no matter what your feelings about America, I know some people hate it, some people love it, but like, it's super gutsy that they literally signed and declared something that either they die or they succeed. And they're very young dudes doing this. So we see them with white wigs and we consider, I think that politicians, you know, some of the younger politicians that many Republicans got excited about here recently, Tulsi Gabbard, Anna Paulina Luna, Vivek Ramaswamy, some of these people that came in are quite younger, and there's a freshness there. And also we feel like, hey, these people are, there's no question they're operating well. You know, there honestly was a lady who served in office. I forget if she was in Congress or Senate, but I just know she seemingly had a stroke from my medical mind. And she was in a wheelchair and they were doing a vote. And somebody next to her, almost like a handler, was telling her how to vote because she was voting incorrectly. Essentially, all she had to say was "I" or "yes," and she went on a rant, like a confused rant. And they said, "Just say I, just say I, just say yes." And it's like, we don't need a bunch of elderly people ruling the country. I love elderly people. I love humans. I think humans are great. I'm pro-human, but I don't see why people who are possibly declining in their faculties and their abilities are so heavily populating leadership.
Yeah. It's like a problem with Japan. A lot of people, a bit of out of topic. You know, as we were talking about American politics, and suddenly like we're talking about Japan. But I just like to make the reflection here in that Japan is literally what America fears to be. A country whose politics is dominated by old people. It belongs in a nursing home, right? The Japanese diet, the Parliament of Japan, is literally a nursing home, right? You have nobody under the age of 50 in the diet, right?
Right.
It's just wealth protection and wealth protection and wealth protection, because that's what old people do. They just want to protect their wealth. They're not willing to give anything and take risk for innovation. And
Right.
so, moving back to America, oh yeah, sorry, going back to Japan again, there is no youth participation inside politics, and that is why the Japanese youth do not indulge themselves in discourse regarding politics, because they're not involved at all, right? But it's
Hmm.
different here when we move back to America, right? You got young people talking about politics here and there. Like, I know some people in this Discord, they just game, but they feel strongly about politics, right? I talked to a lot of young Americans regarding their politics, and even though their facts and also maybe their insight regarding American politics is a bit iffy, it is
Hmm.
no doubt that they have a huge amount of passion for politics. Like, they
Hmm.
feel that this is how the country should be, right? And and let's not have America lose that passion, that youthful passion inside the young people in America. Yeah, like, what is happening in Japan.
Yeah, I think that it, all that I'm saying is a lot of people feel like America is falling short in many areas.
Yeah.
And truthfully, some of the people who are ruling over this country, their time in America is coming to an end. Their time living is coming to an end. They don't have 20 years left to live maybe in this country. So, like you kind of said, a lot of it is kind of protecting their own interests, continuing their lifestyle, and not seemingly maybe not considering the generations that are coming up after them.
Yeah.
And so if you have young people in there that have some skin in the game, and saying like, "Hey, I'm going to live 50 more years in this country. I want it to go well." And
Mm.
there's sort of that sentiment. And also, like I said, we see too many news briefings. Just recently we had that McConnell character, who's one of the Republican leaders who I've never met a single Republican who likes him.
Hmm.
Literally. I've never said, "Hey, do you like McConnell, Mitch McConnell?" Nobody ever says yes. He's an older Republican. He was in charge of, the Republican group there in government for a while. But when he talks, it's just like, this guy is not a talented politician. He may be talented at his connections or this and that, but like, there is nothing this guy says that I'm like, wow, well put. Oh, that's such an interesting
Well put.
insight. And no, it's so important. It's like really they sit around and they talk about laws, they pass laws, and to be perfectly frank, we vote on laws that are too complicated. And most people don't even know what's in there. The news just nicknames the law something, and then they're like, "Oh, this law is about this." That law had 15 things in it, and one of
Hmm.
the things addressed, I don't know, insulin. It's like, what in the heck? Why is this law being voted on that has something to do with insulin when it is called something that has everything to do with immigration or something? It's like,
Mm.
it's so confusing. And when we watch it as Americans, I feel like we feel like these people are out of touch with being a normal American citizen. And we want to have more politicians that actually know what the American life is like, so that they could give it cred, and maybe that they plan to return back to American life. That they
Hmm.
return back to their home and normal life after they serve. Like, that was, I think, the original plan. But now I think we elect people and they think they rule over us, and I think that's not a positive development.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Because when George Washington became the first president of America, of the United States of America, he was actually crowned. He was offered a crown, and which he refused, obviously, right? And which
Hmm.
King George back then, when he was alive, he was informed of this, and he said if he does this, he's the greatest man alive, right? And so
Hmm.
Congress tried to make George Washington president for life, but no, he only served 2 terms, and then he went back to his own homestead and started cutting up trees. You know,
Right.
yeah,
Right.
practically Cincinnatus, and that is what determines American political precedence when it comes to being president for roughly uh 200 years of his existence until like FDR became president, right? And he became president for like 4 period. That's like close to 12 years. But he was
Hmm.
like he was so like he dude was old and he was sick and he served as president for so long he actually died in office. Like man, he really
Right.
loves his job, right? But like
Sure.
yeah,
I'll
Amer-
say this.
Mhm.
When you look at people who want to be in charge, I'll say it's a tale as old as time, especially for my upbringing in classrooms. We used to have class presidents, we used to
Yeah.
have the class parliamentarian and all that. The people who wanted to be in charge were almost always the people that the group of us would say, oh, we don't want them to be in charge. The people who instinctively have some desire for power, that's actually the most unattractive trait. I would almost
Mm.
say disqualifying if I were to look at them and say, "Oh, you want to rule over other people? I don't want you to do that." Like that would be something that I would identify. So what do they
Oh,
do?
that's
A
interesting.
politician
Yeah.
is well, yeah, a politician is going to tell you, "I'm doing this for you." And half the time, more than half the time, I don't believe them at all. They're not doing this for me. They're not going there for me. Now, the people that do seemingly go there for me, when I see them go there and take all the heat, when they're being attacked by the monster that is our current government, when the government says that person's an extremist, and all they're literally saying is, "Hey, my voters care about this." Like they're actually representing their voters in Washington, and they're being called crazy people. And I see something endearing to where these people say, someone that I'll talk about, I really respect. Some people hate her, Carrie Lake in Arizona. I think that she is so well spoken. I love it when she speaks and defends her opinions and her mindset and things like that. And some people demonize her, and she says, and I believe her. And some people say, well, you're fooled then, you're brainwashed. I'm like, no, I truly believe when she looked at Arizona, she looked around and she thought, I don't like the way this is headed. I don't like the drug
Mm.
crisis. I feel like our citizens don't like the way things are headed. And so she was asked, and so she sort of took that, and she says she doesn't really want to be doing it. She just feels like she wants to do it for her family. She wants to
Mm.
do it for her kids. And when I see that, I'm like, yes, like that I appreciate when people sort of back their way into power. That's the person we would want more so.
Mm.
But when you bring up George Washington, that's a super great example of when somebody is, hey, we want you to rule over what could be a very powerful nation. When they refuse, there's something innately beautiful and perfect about that, because I think humans should care far less about ruling over each other and far more about how we can help each other.
Mm. Very inspiring indeed. Yeah. So I guess we're at the end of our discussion, but I have like two more questions to ask you.
Sure.
As an American, right? Obviously, from your explanations, you aren't really satisfied with how America is right now, right? And
Yep.
obviously, it could be better. Even though America is a superpower and life is pretty stable, you've got everything.
Sure.
It doesn't, you don't. Like you can spend a month just saving up, and then you can get a super cool gaming PC, right? Or like you can work for like
Sure.
6 months, and then you get a nice car. Not really a supercar, but still a very nice car, right? And things are pretty stable there. But what do you think America should be as a country? Like, should like out of all the countries in the world, which one do you think America should be more like?
Oh, interesting. Which one should we be more like?
Yeah.
I've been to a lot of different places.
Mhm.
And I will say that when I went to Ireland, uh, every time I told someone as I was an American, they lit up and they smiled and they said, "Hey, let me buy you a beer. Sit down with us, talk with us." They were so friendly. We met up with them again on our trip, and like there was a hospitality, there was a joy, there was a welcomingness to it, and that was really, some places I travel, I say I'm an American.
Mhm.
We weren't treated as well. Like, to be perfectly honest, I went to Italy. They brought us bad bread until my wife spoke Spanish. Then they said, "Oh, wait a second." They took our bad bread and brought us good bread once she spoke Spanish. So it's like they were literally treating us worse because
Oh
we were
wow.
American.
I
And I
see.
felt it. I saw the scowl, I saw the frown, and this and that. So when I went to Ireland, I was welcomed, and there was something beautiful there. Now, Ireland has its own problems. America, we have our own problems. When I
Agreed.
identify our problems, we've forgotten how to disagree. We're afraid of opinions. We're afraid of words. We say words are violence, or things of that nature. And words can be terrible, but I think that the way to stomp out bad speech is more speech. To bring ideas to the table. When you hear a bad idea, it makes a good idea ring that much better.
Yeah.
It illuminates it. And I've been afraid in this country as we've started both sides right now, bro. Both the Democrats and the Republicans or MAGA, I guess, at this point, because MAGA doesn't recognize a load of Republicans right now. But
Yeah.
it's like they're pointing at each side saying, if they win, it's the end of this country as we know it. And that's very dangerous rhetoric. Who knows? Maybe it's true. Maybe one side is out to get us and destroy what this is. Okay. But
Uh-huh.
I'm just saying that is very, very dangerous rhetoric to say if the other side wins, that's it. They're pretty much saying, like right now, we just recently had Trump get shot at. I haven't heard very much of the news that's called him Hitler for 8 years say maybe we shouldn't have called him Hitler every chance we got. Because what do you do when you call someone Hitler? You're essentially saying, well, it's fine if they die. Like it would be good if
Yeah.
they died because they're Hitler,
Yeah.
right? If you call someone Hitler over and over, if you suggest that they're Hitler-like and somebody shoots at them, maybe you calling them Hitler for 8 years had something to do with it. And
Makes
I
a lot
think
of
that
sense.
is logical. And so when I look at the country, we've forgotten how to agree to disagree. We've forgotten that speech is good. Our freedoms are important and they're there for a reason. Even to have guns, people say, hey, there's gun problems. And then they want to limit guns, right? And I can appreciate that guns can cause problems, but guns also, what is the first thing you want when there's a bad guy with a gun? A good guy with a
You
gun.
want a gun as
And
well.
exactly. You want a good guy with a gun to stop the bad guy with a gun. That's what you want when that's
Yeah.
happening. So if you outlaw guns, who are the people that don't give a crap about your law? It's the people who want to do bad things with guns. The only people who wouldn't have guns if you made a law against guns, who would follow all the rules, they would be put at a disadvantage to be able to protect and defend against all the people that would say, screw your gun laws. Now that we know that, a lot of places in this country that have a lot of gun problems are gun-free zones. And then what do they see? Oh, nobody has a gun here. All right, let's go wild. Let's do our thing. It's like, I just feel like there's a lot broken in this country. And I will say, I am going to be voting for Trump. I am, I guess, in under the umbrella of MAGA. But first and foremost, I am a Christian. I personally believe that the kingdom of heaven is the one that I am a citizen of. And while I'm here in this country, I want to inject as much love and positivity and beauty into the world as I can, because there's a lot of lies. There's a lot of deception. When I look at the news, just recently when Trump got shot at, I saw literally dishonest news again. I've seen this for years now, ever since Trump started calling it out. And it said, loud noises caused Trump to fall down. And I'm like, he got shot at. And they don't report that? And like another one said, like, Trump worried about a possible disturbance, or like just really vague headlines. And the dishonest nature of it. They don't know what to make of it. So they don't say that gunshots rang out at his thing. Like, they don't know what to do with that. They don't know how to
Yeah.
politicize it. They don't know how to spin it. But I'm
Yeah.
like, that's so ugly. I want us to tell the truth. I want us to allow people to think for themselves and not be afraid if they're going to think for themselves. And I'll tell you this. I'll tell everybody this. I'll tell the whole world this. Fact checking, misinformation, disinformation is all a propaganda, guys. Okay? That is the most ridiculous thing I've ever talked. Okay, check this. You go on the internet today, and all of a sudden they say, independent fact checkers have found this claim to be false. Who freaking cares? Give these people a name. Call them Paul, Susan, Larry, and June. Okay? Paul, Susan, Larry, and June have done independent fact checking, and they found this claim to be false. Who freaking cares what Paul, Larry, June, who pays them? Who are these people? What are their agenda? What do they think? It's like, we almost think a fact checker is actually, they came out of the womb and all they care about is truth. These people can be corrupt as all get out. And I've seen fact checks. I've seen things called misinformation, disinformation that are now called fact. After time has passed, the misinformation has turned out to be true. The disinformation has turned out to be true. We need to be our own fact checkers. We need to look for truth as individuals. And if people earn your trust, you continue to trust them, but you still are skeptical. Just recently we had the whole terminology, trust the science. It sounds nice. It sounds good. I'm a Christian. I believe trust God, but hey, trust the science, right? What does that essentially mean? How I realized to interpret it was do as you're told. Don't ask questions. I'd rather test the science, question the science, put it up to scrutiny. If it's good science, it'll stand up. Trust the science essentially says, don't ask questions, don't look into it, don't push back. And I hate that. I think that that's very detrimental to our culture. And you're telling people how to think, what direction to go, herding them like sheep. And I want more people to stand up and look at the world for themselves and stop telling people, okay, I'll say this. Duncan Trussell, famous comedian personality, has a statement. And he says, somewhere by a waterfall right now, there's a guy without a cell phone or internet, happy as can be, completely unaware of how scared or angry he's supposed to be. And I think that's exactly true. Our news has served to scare us and make us angry into power systems that want our vote. And I think it's been horribly irresponsible. And when both sides are saying that side is evil, that side is dangerous, that side has done you wrong, and when both sides are doing this, you're going to stir up hatred, all for the purpose of gaining a vote and power. And it's hugely reckless. People get shot at, people get hated. You create an entire generation of people who hate the other thing. We see over there in Israel right now, okay? Not to broaden too much, but you see over there in Israel that they have a conflict. And I just visited Israel right before the conflict. I actually flew home and the next day the conflict began. Sounds suspicious, but it literally was just how it worked out. But essentially, I was there and I left. But when I was there, I ran into wonderful people, Palestinians, wonderful Israeli people, Jews and Muslims and people of all these faiths, right? And I'll just say, they both said they lamented. They were our bus drivers when we went around Israel. And essentially they said, all our children have ever been taught is hate. All they've ever known is fear and war and hate and us versus them. And I see that as this innately ugly way of operating. And I don't want America to turn into exactly that, for Americans to see each other as a threat. Joe Biden in a recent speech essentially said the greatest threat to America is our own citizens. He essentially said Trump supporters. He called them unhinged. He said that they were radical and dangerous. And to be perfectly honest, like I said earlier, I work with the elderly and there's a lot of Trump supporters. And they're beautiful old people that would give you a cookie and wave at you and smile at you and watch the birds in their front porch. And it's like, when you demonize a group of people for the purpose of a vote or for the purpose of stoking fear or anger, I see that as wholly irresponsible and very ugly, and a very ugly human thing that occurs. And I'd have to say that's one of the biggest things I want America to change away from. But like I said, I'm a citizen of heaven. I'm a big fan of Jesus. And as far as America goes, I'm going to do my best to be a good citizen while I'm here.
I see. Thanks for sharing your regard towards what kind of country that America should be. Now, for the final question, right? This is a really simple question. Do you believe the American dream exists?
I believe that the American dream for some exists. And I think that some people who can prop up the American dream in some way, like I said, I'm a Christian first and foremost, the American dream could become their gospel. So the American dream can never be what some people believe it to be in my mind. It can never fulfill your every dream and make you happy and give you eternal life. It can't actually give you the greatest happiness. But I'll say that the American dream for some is maybe to have freedom, to have property, to have the ability to work hard and succeed, to be able to own things and have your property protected, and to be able to interact with other people in a society that is safe and fair. I think it's under threat. I think the American dream is definitely under threat. I think the American dream that I personally grew up believing is definitely under threat, and I think it's largely due to irresponsible power struggles that have stoked angers and fears and caused people to, I'll say this: people say, "Hey, in the Black community," or someone might say in the Indonesian community, or in the gay community, or in this community. Okay, we have divided ourselves into communities, and we forgot our community is our neighbor. Our community is the person that we often see at the gas station when we pay for our gas. Our community is the person that we drive past that is often mowing their lawn. Our community is people. And I live next to people of all colors. They look all sorts of ways, all genders, whatever. They believe all sorts of things. I want goodness for all of them. How can I accomplish that? And how can I start caring more about the people around me and less about these groups that I'm getting forced into being angry or fearful about, and maybe even radicalized to think this is all that matters in the world, is what this politician is telling me or what the news is telling me. I think that the American dream is definitely something that many have appreciated and are living right now. And I do think it's under threat because, unfortunately, I think some have found freedoms to be an inconvenience. They've found them to be problematic. And some would believe that freedoms get in their way of further pursuing their agendas. And I think that I want people to be able to have the American dream that I have come to expect, was that we were going to be free, that this was going to be fair, that we were going to be able to work hard and enjoy a country that was for us and by us. And until that point, I guess we're going to be struggling maybe to realize that we as America, it is called the United States, and it doesn't feel very united right now. It actually feels like we wonder, hey, no matter who wins this election, will every state accept it? At this point in 2016, the Democrats denied that election, said Russia collusion was the reason Trump won. And then Trump lost. And then people said, well, Biden only won because of cheating in that election. So like both sides have now become, but only the left you'll hear generally call people election deniers, but the left were election deniers when Trump won. And this is something that has started, and I saw it in 2016, I saw it in 2020. Elections were under contention. People would say, hey, I'm not sure they won. Before that, Bush and Gore and all that. But it's like, I'm not sure how this is going to shake out. And I hope human goodness prevails. And I hope that this next election goes smoother than I perceive that it could go, because there's a lot of anger, there's a lot of fear, there's a lot of stakes that are being pushed. And I definitely want the best for the people around me. And I'm not sure what America looks like in 2025, to be honest. I'm not sure how things will shake down, how things will go, but I want us to stop demonizing each other as Americans and start humanizing each other. Like I said, it is completely in my belief to treat others the way I want to be treated, to even love my enemies, to love others really, really well. And so if I'm going to love my enemies, I can certainly love Democrats. If I'm going to love my enemies, I can certainly love illegal immigrants. What do I do with having to do society, having to play this, this country game where we do have standards, we do have rules. I guess I'm just going to do my best to try not to be part of the problem and try to maybe be a bright light in a increasingly dark world.
I see. I feel like that's a lesson that a lot of Indonesians can learn, is that when you demonize the opposition inside a democratic race, then it's really irresponsible. Because in Indonesia, we recently had our elections a few months back, and a lot of demonizing happens between free coalitions. So different from America, because we have more than two political parties. They have to make a coalition, so they'll be much more stronger, bigger voter base and all of that, right? But America, you guys literally just have like Democrats and Republicans. Here we have I think we have like 20-ish parties, and all of them, like, they form a coalition with each other, amounting to like free coalitions. And the demonizing happens towards like one of these coalition, because the candidate is a war criminal. The candidate is an alleged war criminal, and yeah, he's an alleged war criminal, and he's the one that won the elections, by the way. But like, yeah,
Gotcha.
we're at the end of our talks. It's been a very eye-opening talk. It's been a while since I talked politics with like actual Americans. I mean, I do talk politics with like younger Americans, but I don't think it's a proper talk about politics, because there's less nuances to it. It's just listening towards. It's just listening their opinions and views. They don't really understand like foreign policy. They don't understand banking. They don't understand immigration. It's just like, oh yeah, I want to vote for Biden because I believe in this. I vote for Trump because I believe in this. And it's yeah, and it's just been a very eye-opening uh conversation with you. But anyways,
Yeah.
thanks for tuning in the Base Indonesian Talks, an interview with a Tennessee native named Ragin. And so Ragin here is, are you a priest? You're a priest, right? Or are you a preacher?
I'm a Seventh Day Adventist Christian, and I guess I I recently, because of the way the world has been, started seeking stability, with another thing becoming most important to me. And I think my faith has become more important as I have looked around at the world and feel like the world is somewhat broken, not operating well. And when I personally looked at the world and said, "Hey, things aren't going well. There's a lot of anger, a lot of hate, a lot of fear, a lot of gross things taking place." I personally
Uh
feel like the world needs more love injected into it, and in that way, my Christianity made increasingly more and more sense. And I think that yeah, I'm not a pastor. I'm not a priest. I'm just a Christian who is passionate about their faith, trying to uh, much more better understand it. And I guess it, it's been helpful for me.
I see, I see. Well, thank you very much, Ragin, for joining the Base Indonesian Talks. And I'll see you guys in the next episode of the Base Indonesian Talks. Bye bye, everybody.